The 19th century was somewhat of an existential crisis for many Muslim societies. Before their very eyes, they were witnessing their governments falling behind European powers. Western nations such as Britain and Russia were increasingly enforcing their will and domination over Islamic states. The Ottoman Empire, the preeminent Muslim state, was bogged down by issues at its core as well as external threats. In the previous video of this series, we explored the figure of Rifa al-Tahtawi, an Egyptian scholar who studied in France and brought back expertise based on European models for his people to emulate. In this period, intellectuals across the Middle East grappled with ideas on how to reverse the seemingly terminal decline of their civilization. One of the most important and contested themes was the notion of modernity. It wasn't hard to see that Europe's obsession with modernizing had played a key role in its socio-political advancements. But in a region where Islam reigned supreme, reconciling the idea of modernity was always going to be tricky. Tahtawi's ideas would spark an intellectual debate that would forever impact the Muslim world, as they would ask themselves if their religion of Islam was compatible with modernity. The dawn of the 19th century was one that humbled the Islamic world. For over 1,000 years, Islam and the imperial powers it produced were the vanguards of human art, learning, power, and wealth. Although divided, the Ummah's dominance on the global stage proved to Muslims that their ways were divinely bestowed upon them, destined to bring justice and order to a world once dominated by lost unbelievers. However, with the demonstration of Europe's superior armies, governments, and technology, the Muslim world was left questioning what they did wrong to be outdone by the infidel. Instead of blaming their subordination on the overwhelming power and corruption of Western empires, Muslim scholars of the 18th and 19th centuries were instead blaming themselves for straying away from their religion. They concluded that their governments, and in particular the Ottomans, were corrupt and impious in their ruling. Had the Muslim world followed the true Islam, like that of the Prophet and his companions, such a humiliating punishment from Allah would not have occurred. The Salafiyya movement, named in reference to the Salaf, the first 3 generations of Muslims, would spearhead the course of reviving what they considered to be the correct form of Islam. While many Salafiyya movements have emerged, by far the most famous appeared in what is now Saudi Arabia. Considering the pilgrimage to the tombs and shrines of Muslim saints to be a form of idolatry, a scholar by the name of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab would champion a strict Salafist reading of Islamic theology. Allying himself with the ruler of Dariyah, Muhammad ibn Saud, this Wahhabi movement would become the ideological basis for an emerging Saudi Emirat. In 1803, this new state would capture the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, which had been under the control of the Ottomans for nearly 3 centuries. This occupation was short-lived, as the Egyptian army under Muhammad Ali Pasha would recapture the cities and crush the Saudi state by 1818. Nevertheless, it demonstrates the sharp defiance that the Ottoman authorities faced over their fellow Muslim subjects. The call to overthrow the Ottomans from the throne of the Khalifa was a threat for the empire's survival. Ottoman authority had fallen ill by the 19th century, with the majority Christian provinces of the Balkan violently demanding their independence. To lose authority in Christian lands was one thing, but to lose legitimacy in the Islamic realm could mean the complete collapse of the imperial dynasty. This threat almost came to fruition in the 1830s when Muhammad Ali Pasha's Egypt nearly overthrew the Ottomans altogether. Had it not been for the intervention of Russia, Britain, and France, the Ottoman throne would have been controlled by one of their former subjects. Despite their preservation, the blatant reliance on infidel European powers only furthered the illegitimacy of Ottoman authority in Muslim lands. To counter this sentiment, the Ottomans devised an ideological reformation to help solidify their position as the Khalifas. Needing to establish a sense of citizenship amongst its subjects, the Ottomans passed a reform edict in 1856 that made all civilians in the empire equal citizens, irrespective of their creed. Following the European trend of nation-states, the Ottomans attempted to create a national identity for the empire. In 1865, a secretive group of intellectuals, known as the Young Ottomans, would attempt to create a national Ottoman identity. Dissatisfied with the Tanzimat reforms and the empire's subjugation to European demands, the Young Ottomans sought to intellectualize an authentic national identity that could correspond with parliamentarianism, constitutionalism, and liberalism. The new national ideology would become known as Ottomanism. Though inspired by and aspiring to formulate a European-style constitution and government, the Young Ottomans emphasized the importance of maintaining the empire's Islamic character, as for them, religion lay at the foundation of the nation's authority, legitimacy, and identity. Although wanting to adopt the policies of Christian Europe, the Young Ottomans and other Muslim intellectuals like Rifa al-Tahtawi still considered the Islamic faith to be sound and even superior to that of their Western counterparts. This issue of straying behind the West was one of governmentality, not religion. In their eyes, the ideas of nationhood, parliamentarianism, and liberalism did not contradict Islam. Islam as a religion and a way of life was not in need of reform, just the governments that championed it. Before the 19th century, Muslims did not place such a great deal of political importance on a nation's territoriality. This perception was beginning to change around the time of al-Tahtawi's writings, who himself emphasized the importance of having pride for one's birthplace. Creating a sense of national identity and connection to a territory not only created a stronger sense of citizenship, but also a greater sense of patriotism that soldiers would have pride in fighting for. Taking from Rifa's example in Egypt, the Young Ottomans sought to apply the same logic to the whole of the Ottoman Empire, encouraging a national identity that, whilst taking root from Islam, encompassed all citizens regardless of creed. Including non-Muslim subjects as part of this new national movement was extremely important for Ottomanism to work, as much of the empire's decline was due to Christian provinces demanding independence. If non-Muslims felt as though they were citizens of this Muslim nation, there would be no need to seek secession. The millet system, which allowed for the practice of separate legal practices among different religious groups, would be maintained, but matters such as education, taxation, and conscription were to be applied equally. Despite these efforts, both Muslim and non-Muslim subjects rejected Ottomanism, as it would challenge a system the two both enjoyed. For Muslims, Ottomanism meant the elimination of their superior status to non-Muslims, and although technically seen as second-class citizens, non-Muslims enjoyed the autonomy and privileges provided to them by the millet system. Though in constant disagreement with one another, one thing that the Young Ottomans agreed on was that their Islamic faith was compatible with the Western notions of parliamentary democracy and liberalism. This is best demonstrated in the writings of Namik Kemal, who was one of the most influential members of the Young Ottomans. A controversial personality, Kemal published a multitude of journals, poems, and plays that would see him exiled from his home. He believed that the state of Ottoman governance was one of widespread corruption and little to no accountability, of which European powers could easily exploit and manipulate. Criticizing the authoritarian rule of Sultan Abdulaziz, Kemal took inspiration from the British parliamentary system and its constitution as a way to implement accountable government and liberal freedoms to the civilian population. Despite the Western influence, Kemal maintained that adhering to Islam was not only necessary for the empire's survival, but also compatible with liberal democratic principles. He brings examples of councils already existing within the Ottoman Empire, in spite of the heterogeneous nature of the population and the democratic elements of Islamic doctrine within the Quran and Sunnah. He cites a hadith saying that the Prophet once said that the leader of the tribe is its servant. One of his major manifestos is titled, "And seek their counsel in the matter," which is taken from Surah 3 verse 159 of the Quran. To quote him directly, "The state is a moral personality. The making of laws is tantamount to its will, and the execution of laws is its actions. As long as both of these are held in the same hands, the actions of the government can never be saved from the unfettered exercise of will. Thus the necessity for a council of the Ummah arises from this." Kemal would be one of the primary architects of the Ottoman constitution. In 1876, during the reign of Abdul Hamid II, the Ottoman constitution and parliament were established, seeing the first wave of elections ever held in the empire's history. However, due to the loss of the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878 and disagreements between the Sultan and the parliament, the General Assembly was disbanded in 1878, with Abdul Hamid exercising absolute rule over the empire. The new Sultan had inherited an empire on the brink of bankruptcy, civil strife, and collapse. The Orthodox Christian populations of the Balkans and Armenia were revolting and encouraging the Russian Empire to intervene. Ottoman territory in Europe and the Caucasus were directly being threatened, and the empire was becoming more reliant on Britain, France, and Germany for protection and loans. To strengthen the Ottoman state, Abdul Hamid initiated measures to centralize the control of the empire. The construction of railways and telegraph networks across the empire made communication and transportation easier for both citizens and the state. The establishment of primary, secondary, professional, and military schools advanced education across the empire, encouraging students to learn the methods and technology of the West, whilst continuing to maintain their Islamic moral principles. To avoid secession due to nationalism, Abdul Hamid propagated a Pan-Islamist ideology that encouraged Muslims from all over the world to see his status as Amir al-Mu'mineen, commander of the faithful, as the legitimate successor to the Prophet Muhammad. This campaign would be spread throughout the world, reaching Muslims across Africa, Europe, and India. Despite these efforts, however, the Ottoman Empire would continue to spiral into debt and civil resistance. Abdul Hamid harshly clamped down on dissidents, utilizing secret police forces, closing down critical journals, and massacring rebellious minorities. In 1908, a group of political activists known as the Young Turks forced the restoration of the Ottoman parliament and constitution. Abdul Hamid would be overthrown in 1909 and succeeded by his half-brother Mehmed V, who ruled the empire during a time of political upheaval, secessionist conflicts, and the First World War. After being defeated by the Allied forces, the remaining territory of the Ottomans would be divided by Britain and France. The Muslim subjects of the Khalifa were now under the direct rule of foreign infidel powers. By 1920, almost every corner of the Muslim world was now in some shape or form under the imperial influence of Western powers. The economy, laws, governance, and technology of the infidel Western empires were penetrating nearly every aspect of Muslim society. The attempt at Western imitation eventually led the Ottomans and other Islamic empires into Western subjugation. And while many in the Ummah acknowledged the wrongdoings of their state representatives, the overwhelming power of the West was something that they could no longer ignore. If the Muslims were to regain their piety, sovereignty, and past glory, they were going to need to get rid of the Western powers. This video is the fourth of a series made in collaboration with Sultan Skinny, who wrote and researched the script. The series will aim to explore Arab intellectual thought in the modern period. Make sure you check out his channel. As usual, a big thank you to my Patreons for continuing to support the channel. Until next time, peace!